The idea for a story set around Monte Cassino, pretty much like most of the story ideas I come up with, came from a documentary on the battle that I'd watched on TV. I've previously said I've been interested in history, particularly World War II, since I was a kid. But there are still a few of the big battles that have passed me by, and Cassino turned out to be one of them. I'd known it was an utter bitch of a battle. Pretty much every one of the Allied armies had been involved. They'd been cut to pieces trying to take this hill with this bombed out monastery on it. But initially, and after the initial stages, when I was mapping out stuff for the channel, Casino didn't really come to mind until I watched this old documentary on Sky. Mrs. A is persistently, being my better half, trying to persuade me to downgrade our Sky subscription because she winces every time the bill comes through each month. My argument is, do you know what? It could be drugs. And literally, I don't go out. So queuing up documentaries on war stuff and supernatural stuff and then binging them when the kids and the little A's have gone to sleep. There are worse habits you can have. I swear she just thinks I'm watching porn. And if she came down and found me watching porn rather than military history docs, she'd probably be more impressed, in truth. Anyway, in this doc, the most highlighting part was they had an ex-Fallschirmjäger on, who, strangely enough, had moved to the UK after the war. And he basically said that the reason that the German paratroopers fought so hard to hold on to Cassino was that they were all pissed off their faces on communion wine. They literally had no pain threshold, no sense of danger. And they fought like there was no tomorrow, repelling attack after attack. The other thing that the documentary made clear was the age of the monastery and all the other churches around the area. So the first thought that popped into my head was, what if, during that battle, somebody from either army stumbled across something sealed up underground, maybe even before those churches had been built? This story takes place during the third attempt by the Allies to take the hill with the monastery on it. And it's as faithful as it can be to the history of the battle. The first attempt to take Cassino took place between January and February of 1944, largely consisting of British, American and French troops. They were successful in outflanking the German positions, but they couldn't take the centre ground, and after 3 weeks of heavy casualties, the Allied armies retired. The second attempt would come in mid-February 44, after the decision had been made to bomb the monastery, using the justification the Germans were storing men and troops there. It's widely accepted now that the bombing was a disaster. It was a high-altitude operation. Only 10% of the bombs hit the target, and the rest actually fell on the Allied lines as well as the German lines, causing casualties. There were no Germans in the abbey. The 230 people killed were all Italian civilians, refugees trying to escape the bloodshed. Centuries of art and culture were destroyed in a few hours, and any compulsion the Germans had to play fair just melted away now, and they moved straight into the ruins. As a result, the following morning, when a combined force of Kiwis, Indians and Gurkhas attacked, the Germans were well entrenched in their new observation post, and that force was shredded. They were still trying to use the same tactics they'd used before. The Germans now had the advantage of better observations for their artillery and their machine gun posts, and that army never stood a chance. The third battle would take place over a 2-week period in mid-March, and it opened with the bombardment as described in this story. It was a combined force of Indian and Kiwi soldiers, and they came closer than anyone before to capturing the abbey, falling just short, having had the benefit of armoured support. But they failed again, and the final push came 2 months later with the addition of Polish and Canadian forces. And eventually, after a week of fighting, they were able to take the German positions. In all, the Allies would take about 55,000 casualties to take Cassino, 3 times more than the German defenders. And the Germans were able to successfully stall their army around one defensive position for a 6-month period, effectively bleeding them dry. For the monster, I ran through various ideas in my head, one of which was to go down the Chronicles of Riddick path and have something blind that hunted in the dark. The other was perhaps something that could turn people into stone statues by biting them or swiping them. And the idea behind that was to have visuals of stone soldiers from throughout the ages who'd encountered it, which I think would have been something really cool for Sean to have drawn. But the genesis of Blight actually comes from the X-Files. I was a massive fan of the X-Files when it first started. If you haven't watched it, kids, ask your dad. But the longer it went on for, the more I switched off it. It started out the first couple of seasons as a Creature of the Week feature, and they were amazing episodes to watch. I think I've already referenced that Eugene Toombs was the basis for where Lucius comes from. But the more the episodes focused on conspiracy theories, and the more you had to have watched those episodes to know what was going on, the more it turned me off, to be honest. I just wanted to tune into monsters every week. But the episode that always stuck in my mind came all the way back in season 1, and it was called Darkness Falls. And if you remember, that's the one where lumberjacks essentially release vampiric bugs from trees, and they get cocooned and have all the fluids drained out. It's also an early appearance for Titus Welliver as well. That stuff scared the shit out of me. And it also led me to incorporate the idea of a hive mind entity that liked to hover around in a humanoid form. I guess there's elements of Alien in there as well, using human bodies as incubators, the helplessness once they've infected you. I don't know if it was scary enough for you guys. I hope it was. It was for me, because whilst I was sat subtitling this week, a fly landed on the window next to me and literally scared the bejesus out of me. So I am taking that as a win. The Casino script was one of my earlier scripts. It's been sat on the shelf now, largely as a when I need it job, which I did. When I was subtitling it, it did strike me how similar the character of Nathaniel Davey was compared to Sidney Shepherd, who was the first one I'd written out. I guess my answer to any criticism there would be if you're saying there's lack of depth to those characters, it's that they're only brief scripts, they're only a couple of thousand words. And there are similarities in that a whole generation of men were called to fight in a war they had no experience of. It's reasonable. Men like that would respond in similar ways to the situation I put them in. So I recognise perhaps I need to up my game a little bit in terms of character development, but I hope it's not been an issue for anybody who's been watching. You'll also notice that the artwork is very different this time round. Don't worry, as always, there's nothing wrong with Sean. We've just both got a bit going on at the moment. The artist is Etienne Allen. He's a big fan of the show, big fan of the channel. From an early point, he asked if he could do the artwork for an episode, and I'm grateful he could give up the time and the effort to do that. I'd quite like to see him do it again if he could. He is also the main editor on our Discord, which you're more than welcome to join. And he started working on a fandom wiki as well, none of which I asked for him to do, and all of which I'm massively grateful that he does. I'm indebted to him and a few of the others who've put in work here and there to support this. Possibly the best part of doing this has been the fact that it's linked me up with people all over the world with a similar passion, a similar mindset, and a lot of talent. And I'm grateful to have met each and every one of them. Anyway, I'm welling up a bit here now, which is quite unlike me. So I will wrap things up. If you've got any questions, you can always just comment or send me an email. And I will see you guys again soon.